Welcome to the newest edition of the Cohn Zone. My dad and I are going to be listing the biggest storylines for the 49ers heading into the 2020 season. We're going to go back and forth. Dad, why don't you start us off?
Okay, I have a big storyline. It may not be the number one, but it'll be close. Jimmy Garoppolo, how good will he be? And another way of saying it is, how much improvement will he show? We know that he's a good quarterback. You and I both agree he's a solid B, which when I got B's in college, I wasn't hurt. It was a good grade. It was better than a C or a D or an F. We know that he does certain things very well. He's a genius on third down. And yet, toward the end of the season, in the playoffs, and especially in the Super Bowl, Kyle Shanahan seemed reluctant to use him. It's almost like he organized the offense around him to exclude him a little bit, except at the end when things went crazy. So I would say, I'm going to say one other thing. We've talked on our videos about Bill Walsh, and he said, the quarterback is the limit, defines the limit of my offense. Well, I'm sure Shanahan feels the same way, and I'm sure he would like to raise the limit with Jimmy. So what we're looking at is Jimmy going to raise the limit? Can he become a B plus or an A minus or an A in this season? And if he can, he will be the Niners quarterback for ages to go. If not, funny things could happen after next season. So that's my first storyline.
It's interesting you call him a B. Bill Walsh would never settle for a B at quarterback. He'd
No
always
way.
be looking for the A because he didn't want that limit. And the thing with the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo, they're not paying him to be a B. They're paying him $27 million a year, and that's A money. So he doesn't have that much experience, but they expect him to play like that this year. And the thing about him is, to me, this seems like a make or break year for him because he's very expensive and he's on a year-to-year contract. They can get rid of him after next year. They could have extended his contract and made him more affordable this year, but they didn't. They extended Kyle Shanahan's contract. So to me, that's their statement to the team that they believe in Kyle Shanahan and they still have to see a little bit more from Jimmy. I think it's a very big year for him.
Okay, and let's just add a couple of things. They want to see more from Jimmy. They would like him to grow. They probably have faith in him that he'll grow and be what they want, but they're not entirely sold on him. I have one question to ask you. I spoke for you and said you think he's a B, but I didn't consult with you. Do you agree with my grade?
I might go B minus, but I think B's fair. I think B's fair. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's hear your storyline.
Okay. I'd like to know, this is a big one. I'd like to see if last season was a one-off. And everyone expects that it isn't. I expect the Niners are going to go 12-4. And everyone thinks that the Niners are a top flight organization once again. But when you step back, they've had one winning season since 2013. The head coach is still under 500. He's 23-25. He had a great year, and we expect him to do well next year. But I'd like to see if they can actually have back-to-back successful seasons because that's actually a rarity in this organization. It would be a big step.
I agree that may be the biggest storyline. And a phrase that you and I use sometimes, I expect them to be an elite team, but the burden of proof is on them.
Absolutely. And you just look at what the Rams did last year. They were 9-7 last year, and everyone looks at them as being old news. They didn't even have a losing season, but they're over with. I'm just curious to see if the Niners can back it up. I mean, they brought back their entire team. They lost Buckner and Sanders, but the idea is that they have unfinished business. They need to get back to the Super Bowl, and they can. So I'd like to see if they're as good as they think they are. Dad, what about you? What's another one?
Well, let me just finish
Oh,
on that.
sorry.
I actually think they are as good as they think they are. I do believe they're an elite team. I do. I believe they're one of maybe the 4 or 5 best teams in the entire league.
Me
But
too.
again, they have to prove it. And teams that lose the Super Bowl sometimes don't do all that well the next season.
Sometimes, usually.
Usually.
But that doesn't mean that'll apply to the Niners. Okay.
Okay, my next. Is this going to be Robert Saleh's last season with the 49ers?
Yes. That's a great point.
Let's just slow down about him for a minute. All credit to Kyle Shanahan. He's a hell of a offensive coordinator, and he's a very, very promising head coach. But same goes for Robert Saleh. I mean, he's a hell of a defensive coordinator, and I believe he would be a heck of a head coach. There are certain times last season, Iggy, where I felt the defense carried that offense, which is no knock on anybody. It's one team, it's not two teams. You know Salah, I don't, but I've observed him and I've talked to you about him. I feel he's a wonderful teacher, a great motivator, and a brilliant football mind. I think if the 49ers turn out to be elite again, as I think they will, I think some team is going to take him. I can't imagine Cleveland didn't last season. It was Cleveland, right, Iggy?
Yes.
Okay, I can't imagine Cleveland didn't, but I would think that a lot of people will be knocking on his door. Do you think that's a big storyline?
Absolutely. They shouldn't even have Robert Saleh right now. He should be with the Browns. They get him probably for one more year. That's huge. And the way I look at him, I think if Kyle Shanahan may become a Super Bowl champion head coach one day, but Robert Saleh may as well. I look at him as being the platonic ideal of what you want in a head coach, in a leader. He reminds me of, I would describe him as Pete Carroll with integrity. He has all of Pete Carroll's good qualities, the enthusiasm, the ability to make young players have fun playing football. He doesn't make it a military environment. He
Hold
really,
on.
yes.
Hold on. Be careful what you say about Pete Carroll.
Okay. Okay. I mean,
I
we all
want you
know
to
what
be
happened to
careful.
him at USC. I'm just saying. We all know Pete Carroll's reputation. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but he has a past. Robert Saleh doesn't have that past. He doesn't seem to be the kind of guy who's been, I don't know, cutting corners at certain parts in his career. He seems like a stand-up guy who has all of Pete Carroll's good qualities and Pete Carroll's scheme. I think he's going to have that kind of a career as a head coach. He could have been the head coach at Michigan State starting this year, but he turned down an interview. He knows he's going to be a superstar.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. He
Yeah.
he he didn't want to go to college.
Nope. He's going to be a head coach in the NFL. He's going to be a really good one.
Iggy, if he leaves the Niners after this upcoming season, how will it affect the 49ers?
They don't have a defensive coordinator waiting in the wings. They're going to have to bring in someone else who knows the same scheme, or someone who runs a different scheme. It's going to change it could change the entire philosophy of the defense. That team in 2021 could be totally different. So they got to win it this year.
Okay, what's your next storyline?
Okay, let's see. Well, we just talked about the defense. I'm curious from a schematic point of view, what's the next evolution of Kyle Shanahan's offense? Because last year he came out with this amazing running game that no one expected. It caught 49er fans and opposing coaches by surprise, and it was a lot of fun to watch on the coaches tape in slow motion every week. Now teams will be expecting it. Every team's going to have a strategy to shut it down, and I'm curious to see how Kyle Shanahan can stay one step ahead, because that's what he does for a living. He stays one step ahead of brilliant millionaire defensive coaches who are paid to shut him down. So I'm curious. I think it's going to involve play action deep passes, because everyone's going to be geared up to take away the run, but that means Jimmy's going to have to hit those throws. So I'm curious to see if they can add that without OTAs and minicamp. Want to see the new wrinkles.
Are you convinced Jimmy can make those long throws down the field?
If the receivers are wide open, then yeah. But if he has to hit the guy in stride because the corner's trailing him and on his hip, no. We saw it in the Super Bowl. I don't know. I guess every quarterback has things that they do well and things that they don't do well. And Jimmy's never thrown a good deep pass. I don't know. I think of him as like a second baseman in baseball. He has a flip throw. He doesn't really get his lower body into it. He looks pretty when he's throwing those slant passes, but when it's time to muscle up and throw the ball across the diamond or across the field, it's not really what he does well.
Well, let me say this then. If Kyle Shanahan is gonna, the new iteration of his offense is going to be long throws, Jimmy may be his limit.
Exactly. And if he wants to do that, if Shanahan wants to evolve his offense that way, and it's clear that Jimmy is holding him back, well, that'll be another reason to reevaluate Jimmy and his $27 million contract at the end of the season.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have another storyline.
Okay.
Arik Armstead. They invested a lot in him. They have
Yeah.
invested a lot of money in him, a lot of faith in him, and they got rid of Buckner for him.
That's right.
Buckner, as we agree, was the best player on the team. Even I would say Kittle is great, but maybe a little bit ahead of him. And so this is a really big season for Arik Armstead. He has to do a lot of stuff, and I would like to see They used to talk on the 49er teams long ago. If a guy, they needed him, you'd say, could he rise up? They used to say that all the time. So and so rose up. Can he rise up?
Right.
And I think this is a year where Arik Armstead really needs to rise up.
Absolutely. They kept him instead of DeForest Buckner, and Arik Armstead has been in the league for 5 seasons and had one great year.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see if he can do 2 in a row. Was it a one-off for Arik Armstead? Let's stay on the theme of one-offs. The 49ers, Arik Armstead, one more guy, a guy we love and believe in, the running back, Raheem Mostert.
Oh,
He was just fantastic last year, no matter how many carries they gave him down the stretch. But he still has fewer than 300 career carries. He has gotten hurt in the past, and he's had fumbling issues in the past. So if they really give him a full workload next season and start him every game, can he hold up?
I think that's a brilliant point. And again, because running back is so important to that team.
Yeah.
And now they don't have Breida anymore. I both think he's a terrific player, Breida.
Love Breida.
Love him.
I think he's right there with Raheem Mostert. Similar players, maybe not quite as fast, but almost.
Yeah. So now again, Shanahan is very good, both Shanahans, at getting backs you never even heard of, putting them into that system, and they're terrific. So if Mostert, I think they like to limit his carries because he may be a little fragile, and they love him and they don't want him to get hurt. So they need another one. And the point is, they have a history, I'm saying that both, Mike and Kyle, of finding another one and another one and another one. So I have confidence that they can do it. This is a big storyline for them, Mostert and the stability of their running backs.
Absolutely. Dad, do you have one more storyline, or would you like to move on?
Hold on. Guys and girls, let me look.
We prepare.
Oh, yeah, I do have one more.
Okay.
Who are their wide receivers?
There you go. You want me to list them?
Well, why don't you handle this? I came up with the topic because, look, they need wide receivers, and it seems to me that maybe no fault of their own, they may be slightly depleted. So could you talk about the depleted issue?
Well, Deebo Samuel has a broken foot. They hope he'll be back early in the season, and he should be, but that's one starter from last season. The other starter, Emmanuel Sanders, is on the Saints. Yeah. And it's like they felt they couldn't afford Emmanuel Sanders, so they let him go. But at the same time, last season, they felt they absolutely needed Emmanuel Sanders, so they traded a 3rd-round pick for him. And now that he's gone, they're left with the same wide receivers they had last year when they felt they needed Sanders, right? So they're going into week 1 possibly with neither starting wide receiver from their Super Bowl appearance. That's not where you want to be, especially when they're so proud about not necessarily improving this offseason, but bringing back the same team. So they got a problem, and they have to decide by, again, the trade deadline. Are these young wide receivers good enough? Will they allow us to win a Super Bowl? Or are they just not good enough and we have to do yet another trade for a guy like Emmanuel Sanders? That's where they're at.
Iggy, if the season were to start today, who would be their starting wide receivers?
Kendrick Bourne, because of experience. And then your guess is as good as mine. I would guess that Shanahan would probably fast track the rookie that he spent a 1st-round pick on, Brandon Ayuk. Not that he would necessarily be ready, but I think that would probably be Shanahan's tendency to start the player he invested in.
Sure. He is like that. And again, it may work out swimmingly. We're not saying that it won't, but the point is it's something to look at, and it is certainly part of the narrative.